Caitlin, thank you so much. A lot to discuss here with serious implications. Jim Sciutto is joining me now, CNN's chief national security correspondent. Peter Brookes is senior fellow for the National Security Affairs at the Heritage Foundation. He's also a former CIA agent and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under President George W. Bush. And CNN national security analyst Samantha Vinaigrette is here, a former advisor on President Obama's National Security Council. Jim, let me ask you, what are you picking up from your sources? How dead is this summit?
Well, not all dead is the short answer. I'm told by a senior administration official that the door is still open to talks at a later date under different circumstances. And that last qualifier is important because, yes, the proximate cause of this cancellation was that rhetoric in the last 24 hours from the North Korean side, calling the vice president stupid. But there were prior concerns to that. You heard from Secretary Pompeo just a short time ago saying that the U.S. side was not even getting answers to its inquiries as you reach the final couple of weeks before these talks. That's important. You're not getting answers back. That's a real problem. In addition to that, there was concern in the administration about the remaining distance apart on the key issues here, the varying definitions of denuclearization, et cetera. So before the fiery rhetoric of the last 24 hours, there were already concerns about this. And I imagine concerns from the president. Would he go out to a summit that would really get him nowhere and might be an embarrassing development to show up there and walk away with nothing?
Peter, what's your reaction to this letter?
Well, I think that the conditions weren't right. I think it was a good call on the part of the president. Jim outlined it perfectly, in my view. There's serious concerns, and it may have been a historic summit in Singapore, but it may not have been productive. And I also think that just canceling this one doesn't mean that we don't have opportunities in the future to meet again. If you look at major summits, U.S., Soviet, some of them have gone well, some of them have been canceled. They're rescheduled. So I think at this point this was the right call, especially my deep concern about the definition of denuclearization. North Korea seemed to have a much more broader view of this. It wasn't unilateral on the part of North Korea. It was more global, part of the global arms control effort. And also, so that would have been a non-starter for us, where North Korea would ask us to do it. So they didn't give themselves a lot of time to get to this summit, and so I think it's decent. It's a good decision to take a pause and reevaluate.
Samantha, I just want to look down really quick because the president was just tweeting. And of course, let me take a look at it first. Tweeting, if we can throw it up for our viewers as well, saying, sadly, I was forced to cancel the summit meeting in Singapore with Kim Jong-un, and then putting up the letter that he sent to Kim Jong-un. Let me ask you, though, is it strategic or emotional, what we're looking at this morning? I ask that because the president and Zaid's the president seems so angry. That's our reporting, that he was infuriated by North Korea's statement about Mike Pence, calling him stupid. Then in the letter this morning, is this an emotional response? Is it a strategic response? Can it be both?
It can be both, and I think what we're seeing is the fact that this summit was a rush job. We did not take the time to do our homework and to figure out things like Kim's intentions, what we actually wanted out of this summit. And by the way, also, was Kim actually going to show up? It's entirely possible that we had intelligence that Kim may not show up on June 12th, and President Trump wanted to preemptively get around that. We just don't know. And that's why we should have taken time on the front end to figure all this stuff out before we set a date. Now, the question is, what comes next? I have written breakup letters more convincing than what I just read from President Trump, and so you have to.
It's not over yet.
It's not over yet. So you have to wonder: is diplomacy dead?
Do you think so?
I don't think we know.
The other option is not a good one.
The other option is not a good one, but the problem is we're in a bit of a gray zone right now. We kind of tried diplomacy. We may try it again. What other options are on the table? Are we leaving space for Kim to come back to a negotiation that could stretch out over several months, or are we going to something else?
You know what, Jim, Samantha hits on something, I mean, that of course reminds us all, one of the criticisms all along when the talk of a summit and a date was coming and a location was coming, the criticism all along was set a date first and then figure out what you're going to discuss and what's on the table after. And now he's leaving because it seems that he's canceling because there weren't preconditions. It didn't seem clear what he was going to get out of the meeting. It seems he's dropping out for the thing he was criticized of setting it up as.
Well, here's the thing. Typically, you don't set up the principals meeting until you have these other issues laid out, right? There were so many questions there Remember, I covered the Iranian nuclear negotiations. They played out over more than 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Before you got to a point where you're ready to sit down and sign on the big issues here. And there was no discussion in those negotiations of the presidents actually meeting face to face. Here you put the cart before the horse to some degree, is that you agreed to the principals meeting between the presidents, which has never happened before clearly you had ironed out many of these issues. And that was a criticism you heard from many North Korea experts of Democratic and Republican administrations prior to today's events. And you can say that the cancellation is really bearing those concerns out here. That is a concern. Donald Trump has a way of negotiating that has worked for him in many places in the business world, etc. In this environment, it doesn't appear that that strategy worked with the North Korean leader.
Peter, do you think that the North Koreans knew they were crossing a line with the statement when they put it out?
Yeah, they're always very interesting, Kate. They're very hard to understand their intentions. I mean, how surprised were we by the charm offensive? Going back to the Olympics and all of this talk. I mean, I've been working on North Korea issues for 20 years. I've been to North Korea. I was always deeply skeptical, but cautiously optimistic by the changes we'd seen from this young leader. But now we're back to where the sort of standard behavior for North Korea in terms of their international rhetoric.
Samantha, real quick, the wording of the letter everyone should read, but this part of the letter, if you change your mind having to do with this most important summit, please do not hesitate to call me or write. Is that how this works?
No, it's not how it works. I mean, typically, again, as Jim and I both mentioned, you have your experts and your staff in constant touch to figure out what it's going to take to actually get two principals to the table. And so at this point, again, I feel really uncomfortable. We're in a gray zone, and we don't know if this is going to happen, if it isn't going to happen. And I think the key question is going to be, how does North Korea respond? Are they going to shoot missiles, or are they going to leave the door open to diplomacy?
Right. The ball is in whose court right now? I
think in some respects it's in the North Koreans' court to see how they respond and how their patrons, China and Russia, react to Donald Trump calling off the summit.
Thank you so much. A lot of, as Sam says, a lot of gray zone, a lot of gray area here, a lot to be worked out. Thank you, Peter, Jim, Sam. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to have much more ahead.